can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I feel like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Jeremy Weiss here. This is a special episode of Inspired Insider. It's special because it's about and with my friend John Ruhlin. Unfortunately, John Ruhlin passed away unexpectedly in August of 2024. He left behind his wife and 4 daughters. So just to honor him and his new book, which I'll talk about in a second, we did an episode, The Art and Science of Gifting. And this is a re-release from when we originally did the interview. And before his passing, John was actually working on his most important book called Beyond Giftology. You can check it out on beyondgiftology.com and also on Amazon. It reveals his complete referral partner training system, which is a framework that transforms how businesses generate referrals by creating relationship snowballs. John was an absolute master at this, and I've had the pleasure of hanging out with him and knowing him for many years, and the world is going to miss him greatly. So check this episode out. Dr. Jeremy Weiss here. I'm founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders like the founders of P90X, Atari, many more, and how they overcome big challenges in life and business. Today, we have one of my favorite people, John Ruhlin. He's #1 all-time distributor of Cutco knives in the 65-plus year history of the company. Very important, he's the author of Giftology, The Art and Science of Using Gifts to Cut Through the Noise, Increase Referrals, and Strengthen Retention. John, of course, I'm going to read the subheadline because you spent probably hours and hours crafting that. He's the master gift giver who forges lifetime relationships while generating huge returns for his clients, who some of you have heard of: Chicago Cubs, Orlando Magic, Chicago Bears, top entrepreneurs like Darren Hardy, Cameron Herold, and many more. And the true essence of John Ruhlin can be summed up by a quote from a very important person, John. And this person said, John Ruhlin helps people love on people. So, John, thanks for joining me.
Oh, man, you're going to go right to the heart and the core of me with that quote, man.
So who's the important person that I'm talking about?
I have 3 daughters under 5,
yeah.
And my oldest is Reagan, and that's how she describes when she talks about what her dad does. We talk a lot about solving problems. And
how did that come up?
I think I asked her, like, so what does dad do, every day? And
it's a good question.
Yeah.
Wait, how old's the oldest?
5.
5, okay.
Yeah, and you always hear like you don't really know what you do unless you can explain it to a 6th grader. And so I'm like, well, I wonder if I could explain what I do so that a 5-year-old could understand. So we have conversations about what dad does with gifting and helping solving problems, and
right.
that's how you make money. You solve problems. And so my daughter is now coming home saying, "Hey, Dad, I solved a problem today," and which is really
it's like,
cool.
Is she asking for money?
Yeah. Yeah, she's like, she sees something on TV, and so she now understands that you don't just get money, like you earn money through solving problems, and people pay you. Sometimes they pay you, sometimes they don't. And so I asked her one time, like, after explaining it a number of times, what does dad do? And she's like, Dad, you help people love on people. And I'm like, man, if that's wow,
that should be the subheadline of somewhere on your website. I mean, don't you agree?
Yeah. Yeah, I've thought about putting it on there. Although it depends upon who you're talking to. Like I tell people, like, love well, or I help people love on their most important relationships. Like, never before have been more comfortable using the word love in business. But there is like still a weird, like, sounds a little too warm and fuzzy. Like, is this for real? Is there like this? Is this like a cult? Like, and so like I probably will incorporate it somehow. I do definitely when I speak. I don't know if that's how you.
If it's prefaced with "my daughter said," if it just says John Ruhlin helps people love on people, it sounds weird. But if you're like, my 5-year-old daughter described me as I help people love on people,
Yeah.
that would put it in context a
The
little
context.
bit. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that makes total sense. So I probably, yeah, I definitely use it verbally, but I haven't put it on any websites or anything anywhere. But it still warms my heart when I hear it.
I love it, and it really does sum up what you do. And people should check out, Giftology. I had the opportunity to read it; it's fantastic. And I always like to include a fun fact, John. We're going to get into a lot of great stories which you have. And fun fact, there's a few. One is your mom and wife's mother are one of 13 kids. And you have 65 first cousins on one side. And another fun fact is you almost died proposing to your wife, which I don't even know if we're going to talk about that. Maybe if people listen to the end, maybe we'll talk about it, maybe not. But the other one is you grew up one of 6 kids. So big families. What was it like growing up one of 6 kids?
Well, like anybody, like no matter how you grow up, you don't really know any different. So it just kind of seemed like the normal thing. We grew up out in the middle of nowhere, 500-person town, 50 acres. And so
you're like 10% of the town. You're just family.
Yeah, just our family is like 10%.
So where are you in that birth order in the 6?
I'm well, it's a blended family. So I have half brothers, step brothers, full sister.
Yeah.
But we were a very tight family, and I was second oldest, but I probably, in many ways, because of family dynamics, I was more like the oldest, even though I had a 4-year-old brother. But we worked, you want to talk about work ethic and hustle. What
was it like?
Well, I woke up every morning and milked goats, like literally like milk by hand, like not with a machine. Like we milked goats every morning. We had a 1-acre garden, which like most people are like, 1 acre is a lot to mow. If you've ever hoed a garden or hoed anything, like I have blisters and like like weeding for like hours, and like in the middle of the summer, like in the Midwest, like it gets kind of hot and humid, and we heated our whole house with wood. So like literally like not like, hey, we have a decorative fireplace. Like we had a wood stove in the basement that when it went out, like you'd wake up in the morning, the house would be cold as I don't want to use the words. And it was not that we weren't slaves, but we learned that like, if you wanted to be a part of this family, like you have to contribute.
Right.
And like there's no like when you have animals, you don't take the day off. Like the animals need to eat, and the animals, like if the water's frozen, you got to go break the ice. And
I'm curious about that. Growing up in that household, what's discipline like? Is it just expected, or was it very strict?
There was. I would say at some level, my mom was. She grew up one of 13, so she understood pecking order and making sure that things were dialed in. Like anytime you take 6 kids anywhere, like I take 3 now, and it's like it's a madhouse. And so like it was one, you didn't leave the house very often, but if you did, you were if you got the look, like you knew you were going to get in trouble at home, kind of thing. Like there's definitely like it wasn't you're in timeout. It was like you're going to get paddled when you get home if you step out of line. So like. But my mom she's great. She was.
I could see if you can stick out among 6 kids and probably learn from your mom who's one of 13. It's like almost in your nature to try and stick out. And like the Ruhlingroup.com, what I noticed is the subheadline is obviously, do you want to stand out? Do you struggle to stand out? And that's a big thing about Giftology.
Yeah, it's all about standing out. I think that you can stand out in a negative way. And I chose to be the overachiever and try to stand out in a positive way. So like even though an entrepreneur, I'm also like, I got straight A's from kindergarten through 12th grade. Yeah. I was a hustler. I was like, if I was going to do it, I think I liked the praise. And so like, I'm somebody that love language is words of affirmation. So I sought that out. And so I stepped out of line occasionally, but in general, like I wanted positive feedback, not negative.
Yeah. And we're going to get into the stories because, one thing about reading your book, John, is my creative juices get flowing. So I love hearing the creativity and the things that you help people do and that you do yourself. But I'm curious, from early on, when you were growing up, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I didn't want to work with my hands, so I wanted to...
You're like the opposite of all the blisters I got.
Yeah, like if it involves like not having to sweat my butt off, baling hay and feeding the animals every day.
It's a good lesson to learn. though.
Yeah, no. So with grades and being poor, like I thought I'd go be a doctor. My mom was into health and wellness. She was like having bread shipped in from like Stan Evans, like whole wheat bread. We had whole wheat buckwheat pancakes. She was bringing in Nature Sunshine. So I was going to go be a DO or a chiropractor or something in that category to like, one, make more money, one, work with my head and not my hands, and two, make my mom, three, make my mom proud. And so I was pre-med going into to college.
And then something happened.
Yeah,
you saw one of your friends doing really well.
Yeah, well, one, I had started a business working with my hands, but I was making $40, $50 an hour. That was the cable company. And so I fell off the ladder 2 different times, got lucky, didn't get hurt. I landed in mulch. I'm like, I'm a person of faith. And so I'm like, God's trying to show me something. You're like, this is like, John, you're never going to make it through school. So, a buddy of mine was, one buddy had put himself through school selling knives, and I thought it was the weirdest thing ever. And then another buddy from college, who I went to high school with, was the most anti-salesperson on the planet. He was a seminary major, was going to go do youth ministry. And he started selling. I'm like, he couldn't sell ice to he couldn't sell water to a person on fire. Like there's no, this is not. And his name's Steve Wiggers. He's an amazing human being. But when he started to sell it and actually sold it, I was like, it was like this weird, this just like I'm in another world. Like this doesn't even this can't.
Whoa, how was that? Did you ask him how did he sell?
Well, I did. And he's like, I follow the program. I meet with people.
He just sticks to the program.
He stuck to the program. He did the appointments. He was, and I think, he came from an affluent background. His family was successful, and he was seeing successful people. And he's a super nice guy. He was well known in the community. And so I think that the odds were in his favor from a family perspective.
Right.
But it still boggled my mind. But after a couple weeks of hearing him come home with $1,000 knife sales, I'm like, if he can do it, I can try. So I'm like, I committed to give it 6 weeks. That's kind of the bottom line. Is I wore my glasses, looked smarter. I wore my one tie, and went in for the interview. And I'm like, here goes nothing. Even though my mom thought I was crazy, and she's like, none of our friends can afford this cutlery. I said, what the heck?
What was the biggest learning you had from going through the training? And because doing face-to-face sales is not easy, but you learn a lot. So I'm curious what did you learn from that?
Well, I think you learn how to make people feel comfortable. I think a lot of times in sales, you're in a lot of situations with a lot of different personalities. And I think that one of my skill sets, even though I never considered myself really a salesperson, is understanding, being able to empathize and being able to make somebody feel comfortable. And I think that when you're sitting at somebody's kitchen table and they've never met you before, and their kids are there, and it's late at night, and they just really want to go to bed, and they set this appointment, you learn how to make, learn how to have fun. You learn how to handle objections in a way that doesn't make them feel pressured. And so I brought coloring books. I brought food to chop up. I brought dessert to have. I cooked people dinner. I made it fun and lively. And because of that, I think that people really appreciated that element of it.
I think you mentioned something really important, which is objections, right? Even in our day-to-day lives right now, we have to overcome objections. What was one thing that you found worked really well? Because it's not like you're a high-pressure, pushy person. So I'm curious from your standpoint, what worked well with overcoming objections for you?
Well, I think that understanding that you can't handle an objection that isn't said. And I think a lot of times people get, somebody that's not experienced in sales was as soon as they hear an objection, they think that's a bad thing. And really what they're doing, when they're actually helping you by sharing what's really in their heart and mind. So they're really saying that everybody has that, what's going on in their head, and most people don't share it. And so I think understanding that objections are good. That means that they're being honest with you. That means that they're actually sharing. And I could handle any objection that got brought up. And sometimes it was this isn't a fit for you. If you can't put food on the table, you shouldn't be buying high-end knives.
Right.
Even if you want to buy them, it would be stupid for you. But I think because we qualified our leads really well, and because I had fun with people, and I was able to handle the objections no matter what came up, I was able to handle things. We sold 9 out of every 10 people that we sat in front of.
Really? Wow.
before I even got into the business side of selling to companies. Because we qualified people, we had fun, we did our homework. You understand that a lot of the interview takes place, days or weeks ahead of, you had to be prepared. And so when I went into most situations, I knew what they liked. I knew what their kids' names were. I brought over coloring books. I knew that they liked nice things. I knew that they entertained all the time. So I could go in and talk specifically to them, and they're like, wow, I had no interest in knives, and all of a sudden now, like, I don't understand how I lived without these knives. like an hour later or 2 hours later, and not in a sleazy, like boiler room kind of way. Like, I'm sitting the same way I would with you. Like, I'm having dinner.
Right.
We're talking about 90% of things aren't even knife related, but when we do talk, like, we were able to handle those.
Yeah, objections. I mean, that's a good one. Bringing up objections or like overcoming objections, but like you said, actually bringing up objections that they may be thinking that they're not going to say because most people aren't going to say them, and that's important too. When did you transition, John, from most people are going, into people's homes, and you had a realization of going to companies?
Yeah, well, I think I was fortunate to mentor early on in my career. I was 20 years old. I was dating a girl at the time. Not the girl that I ended up marrying, but I'm really thankful that we were dating because her dad was an attorney. But I noticed when you're poor, you notice one, generosity, two, I wasn't connected, and every deal seemed to flow his way. Like, he was an attorney, but he also owned real estate, and then all of a sudden that real estate would become the huge development in the area, and then he somehow was asked on the bank board, and he owned part of the bank and oil wells, and so I remember thinking, well, Paul's always giving away things, like, find a deal on noodles and everybody would end up with like a year's supply of noodles. Well, I'll pitch him the idea of pocket knives to all his clients. And so, one, he had bought a set for each of his daughters. Two, he ended up coming back to me and challenging me and saying, John, could we engrave the paring knives? And I'm like, that's weird. Why would you give paring knives to grown men that own companies?
Right.
And he explained to me, the inner circle. I got to take care of the whole family. Everything else takes care of itself. So early on in my career, I saw the power of generosity, but I also saw the power of talking to business owners. So even though I was selling in homes, I wouldn't say, who do you know that likes knives? Because in their head, they're thinking nobody. I would say, who do you know that owns a company? That's how I asked for referrals. Well, I'd get a list. I averaged
That's really smart, yeah.
I averaged 10 leads per appointment of people that own businesses.
Because you asked the right question.
Because I asked the right question. And so, one, I'm talking to people that appreciate quality. Most business owners like nice things. And two, if I could sell them on me and on the product, now I could go back to them and sell them knives for their business, for their employees, for their clients, as a business tool, not as a gift, as a business tool. But my sales doubled because I was seeing people that could afford nice things. Business owners, entrepreneurs tend to be affluent or at least have access to, or an appreciation for nicer things. So it was a double win.
Yeah.
And even if I didn't sell them anything, I sold them on me, and now I have a network of 1,000 business owners that let me into their home.
Even if they don't buy, you bond if they let in their kids are running around you, and exactly.
I mean, I can call them 10 years later and be like, yeah, we remember sitting down. Yeah, it was like a built-in network of people. If I decided to go get a real job, now I have people that like and trust me that know that I can sell.
Yeah.
So it was like an insurance policy of if this all goes to hell in a handbasket, at least I got a bunch of people that own businesses that like me and trust me and know I can help.
So, John, you went pre-med, right? So what did you do after college, huh? Were you just doing so well that you're forget this doctor thing, or?
Yeah, I did. I kind of was thinking that as I was going to school, I started to have to hire people and was speaking, and it's I'm going to be a doctor, one, because I want to impress my mom, and I like health. But really, in many ways, I was doing it for the wrong reasons. I was it was kind of a money thing.
Yeah,
and I'm I'm getting to talk to people. I'm getting to make good money.
Right.
I get to control my own schedule. Why would I go be a doctor?
Right. Go talk to a doctor, right?
Yeah, go talk to a doctor.
10 years later, then you'd be practicing.
Doing what I want to be doing. And I'm and $250,000 in debt. And I was like, I'm just going to see if this gifting thing has some legs.
Yeah.
And so I ended up, I decided I'll give it another year out of school, and I never looked back. It was, it was 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah. Now, I'm so curious, when did the introduction. So I'm going to jump around for a second because I'm so curious. Obviously, I'm in Chicago, so I'm curious of how you got the Chicago Cubs as a client.
Yeah, well, it was like 7 years in the making.
7 years.
Yeah, it took 7 years. It seems to be like a lucky number 7. Like some of my best relationships, the largest home builder.
Were you a baseball fan growing up or anything?
I played baseball,
Okay.
Little League, up until like they started throwing curvebalds in like freshman year of high school, and I'm like, I can't hit that to save my life. I moved on to basketball and stayed with basketball. That was, but I have an appreciation for sports. I mean, you grew up a boy in Ohio, like you have an appreciation for sports, and so one of the reasons I got the Cubs was because I had 20 other pro sports franchises I had worked with, so I was kind of in the industry.
Yeah.
2, I was speaking.
But it still took you 7 years, though.
It took 7 years. So I met at a NASCAR event. I had a couple of NASCAR clients. I met this guy at this. It was called Burgers and Beer, and this guy named Bobby D, who is a bigwig and connected it with Callaway Golf. Like he hosted this thing at Daytona every year, and so I met a guy who was at the time Time Warner. And we hit it off, and we chatted for a little bit. We exchanged information. Well, he then went to the Cubs, and he was from Chicago. So we stayed in touch, and I pitched him the idea of different things. And then I'd see him at conferences where I was speaking at all these pro sports teams were at. And eventually, like, I was showing them knives and different things. And he came back to me eventually and said, hey, we're redoing Wrigley Field. Iconic structure. We want to do something that's unlike anything that's been done before. Yeah. And we have this wood from the locker room. And so we want to make a gift that incorporates the wood from the locker room. So we have 400 relationships. You know, they're sponsors, they're suite owners. They're people that can afford anything that they want. So we can't like give them something trinkety.
Right.
And so he said, come up with an idea. So I said, well, we have this speaker company we work with. What if we made a speaker, like a Bluetooth speaker out of the wood? And he said, they were like, yeah, that's perfect. Headphones or speakers. And so this actually is one of the headphone companies. And so I went back to the speaker company, and they're like, yeah, we can't do that. I'm like, oh, I've already talked to the Cubs, and they want to do this project. So we ended up going to a secondary supplier, and so we bought the speakers, ripped them apart, ripped the wood out, because they were made out of wood as well, and reformed this Wrigley Field wood, routed it out, and created these iconic Bluetooth speakers that they are like literally like they're like, John, we don't know how we're going to outdo ourselves next year. Like we have other pieces of Wrigley Field.
Rip down the brick ivy or something. Yeah.
Like I'm not sure what we're.
So they're going to send a gift every year.
Normally they do.
Yeah.
Normally they do. So this year we're trying to figure out what that next, piece of Wrigley history that we're going to weave into a gift, and so I think there's more and more companies that and teams that have. If they have a historical structure or something that's historical about their building or their product, weaving that into the gift, I think is going to become more and more a part of what we do.
So at that point, you had 20 pro sports teams. What was the first big one that you remember kind of pumping your fist with?
Well, the first one that we landed ever was Roush Fenway, the NASCAR driving the team, and they also own Fenway Sports Group, which owns the Boston teams, and they also are involved with Miami. And so I actually the guy who introduced me to my wife was at the seed corn company. He left and went to NASCAR, Scott's, the big lawn care company, and we had this great relationship. And he's like, John, NASCAR is like perfect for you. All these Fortune 1000 companies, they're all entertaining people, and they all suck at gifting. They're all giving this like over-branded swag. So he teed us up to Roush Fenway because they were sponsoring the team, and so we ended up doing gifts for. And we ended up doing the knives for like one of their CMO summits, like where all the CMOs of like Coke and Pepsi come. And
that's a big one.
It was massive. And then at one of the dinners, I met the chief financial officer, and followed up with him, sent a gift to his assistant, and then magically they left the NASCAR side and became the CFO of the Miami Dolphins. And so our first NFL team ended up coming from. The assistant became such an advocate. She took it around to every division head of the Dolphins and showed off the gifts that we did for her.
So what type of things? Because you say very casually, I sent a gift to her assistant, but it was more than just a gift to the assistant. What kind of things did you do?
Well, I'm a big believer in whatever you send to the executive, you should send to the inner circle at the same level or even more, because they're usually treated like pawns. They're not respected. And so anytime I'd send a knife or a leather good or whatever to the
You don't
executive,
just send a gift. That's why I say, like, when I receive a note from you, it's on like a metal slate that's written, and I like just have it there to remind me I'm slacking off if I don't. Yeah, I still have that note. I think you sent it a couple years ago. Yeah, but you just don't send any small
just
things.
anything.
So yeah.
No, I mean it's personalized with their name. It's world class. You know, whether it's a knife or a speaker, it's best in class. It's personalized. It's packaged well. It has a handwritten note for me.
So what did you end up sending that lady?
I sent a couple. It was. I sent a couple knives and said, "Hey, I hear you're so and so's right hand person. He speaks really well of you. At some point in time, I'd love to carve out some time to chat about you, to chat with you, and see if we might be able to help you with some of your challenging situations related to gifting." Mm-hmm. And she responded right away. She's like, "Oh my gosh, this is beautiful. I took it home to my husband. He thinks it's amazing. How did you find out his name?" She flipped.
How did you find out his name?
I asked. I actually asked the executive. I said, "Hey, I want to do something really nice for your assistant." And oftentimes I'll ask the assistant, "Hey, I want to do something really nice for so and so." Don't tell them, but other times I'll find out on Facebook,
right.
or LinkedIn, or articles, depending upon how prominent the person is. I mean, in 2016, people are pretty open with their information.
Yeah, for
so
sure.
it's usually pretty easy to find if you want to do the homework.
Yeah, for sure. So, John, with that, I'm curious what the most outrageous and craziest gift you've ever given.
Recently, we gave somebody that I felt like, one, I really enjoyed being on their show. Two, the person who made the referral, I wanted to make sure that they looked really good because they kind of stuck their neck out for me. And three, the conversation came up about what my morning routine was, which included a sauna. And he kept bringing the sauna up in the conversation. So I sent him a sauna. And that was John Lee Dumas, the entrepreneur on fire.
Sauna.
I sent him a sauna, which the funny part is, and most people would get disappointed with this, I sent him this custom wooden postcard that let him know a sauna was on its way, going to arrive in 2 weeks. And he called me immediately and said, "John, this is amazing. Is this for real?" And I said, "Of course it's for real. Like, we talked about it, like, on the show multiple times." And he said, "John, I live in a 2-bedroom condo where I do my show. I'm on the water in San Diego. I don't have room for a sauna, but that's amazing." I said, "Well, whenever you move to another place, you have a rain check. I'll just delay the sauna. We'll just hold on to it." And he said, "Man, you're crazy. Okay, that's amazing." And then he calls me an hour later. He's like, "John, I have this idea. What do you think?" He's like, "My dad, I'm from Maine. It's cold as heck in Maine. My dad would love a sauna. I'm sure he would love a sauna. Can I surprise him with the sauna?" And I'm like, "Sure, we'll put the sauna wherever you want the sauna at." He's like, "I'll use it when I go back home." And sure enough, like, we redirected his dad. Every time they talk, all they talk about is the sauna. John now gets to use it, but he's like a rock star to his dad by,
right. That makes perfect sense. Like, why in San Diego? You want it in Maine, right? Yeah.
Want it in Maine. So yeah, the sauna's in Maine, and he's fired up, and now he can't forget about me because his dad's talking about me every time they have a conversation.
I love that. That's awesome. What about most exciting client that your client landed because of a gift? Because I mean, you're helping these big companies get clients.
Yeah.
What were you most excited about that, second degree of separation you helped with?
Yeah. I don't know if I don't share the story as often, but one of our clients was targeting Target, the executives there, and they were entrepreneurs. They were former Fortune 500 executives. They wanted to go after. They only had a limited pool of people that would change their business, so they wanted to go after Target. And they said, "John, we'll give you anything. We'll give you a stock in the company. Like, we need these meetings," and this one in particular. So we did research, found out that he lives in Minnesota, went to undergrad, and got his MBA from the University of Minnesota. So I'm like, that's the angle. And so
you just spot these things.
Yeah, I mean,
like
you just kind of know. Yeah. Like, alma mater is a big thing for a lot of people. So we took this like 50-inch plasma piece of wood. We carved in the Fight Song mascot, the gopher, and the Fight Song lyrics, and then tied in why they wanted to meet with the Fight Song lyrics into this note, and sent it off to the president of the electronics division, multi-billion-dollar division, his office. And within 24 hours, the assistant called back and said, "I don't know who you guys are. I had to get a dolly to get this thing in and out of the office." Like, that was insane. Whatever you want to talk about, I got 30 minutes for you next Tuesday. Now the challenge is they end up getting the meeting but they were like 8 years ahead of the schedule they were on the bleeding edge, and so
right. Target wasn't ready for it, is what you're saying.
The industry wasn't ready. It was if you've seen in the last 5 years where like Best Buy has the automatic buyback program where if you buy a TV and then want to trade it up within a year, they'll give you a set amount up front. They were talking about this like 12 years ago. And so the industry, like buying back iPhones and all that kind of stuff was like, now it's a huge industry. At the time, they had built the software and they were too ahead of the curve to make it happen. But it got the meeting that they needed to have happen, which was exciting for us.
Yeah.
The stock turned out to be worth nothing, but it was still fun nonetheless.
That is fun. You get to do some fun, creative things. You know, and you mentioned, John, your friend who went to NASCAR, who introduced you and your wife. And you mentioned that he's like, you got to come down here because all these companies do everything wrong, big swag. And I know you have like 16 mistakes that people make when they're giving gifts. And I still think about, like, from listening to you and watching what you have to say, I still think about some of those rules that you have. So could you mention a few of those big mistakes that people make that they may not even know they're making them?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest ones is we do things in business that we'd never do in our personal lives. And one of the most immediate ones that comes to mind is you never go to a wedding and like you're going to get like, I have on the registry a Tiffany's vase or whatever it is that's on the registry. You'd never engrave like compliments of Jeremy Weiss.
If you were still getting married, I would definitely send that to you.
You'd say, yeah, that would be, I would laugh and laugh. And I'd be like, what the heck am I supposed to do with it? But people do that in business all the time. They make the gift all about themselves, which is a promotional item. It's swag. It's maybe it's marketing, but if you actually want the other person to feel appreciated, to feel loved, to actually use the item, you have to put their name on it, their logo on it, not your own. So it has to be all about the recipient, not about the brand. Yeah. I see a lot of people that are like, we're best-in-class car company. We're world-class consulting company. And then they for some reason, the gift, they think it's okay to be mediocre. Like, hey, we're world-class over here, but our relationships, we'll just import it from China and do it as mediocre as possible. It's like, it's like, that's not congruent. Like, so it's either worth doing first class if you're first class, or write a really nice handwritten note on a piece of steel or a piece of nice paper and call it a day. I see a lot of incongruency. I see a lot of people gift at the wrong time, or they gift things that, like we send out $250,000 a year worth of gifts to our clients and prospects every year. Other companies, do more, but they do all their gifting in the same 4 weeks time, which everybody says they want to be out of the box and different and unique. Then don't give a gift with the other 50 competitors that you're trying to compete with. It's the dumbest thing. They give consumables, and they think that they're doing themselves a favor. Meanwhile, the other person either A, doesn't eat meat, or they're on a diet, or people measure cost per impression. Like, if somebody eats it and it's gone in 5 minutes, your cost per impression might have only been $50, but it was $50 for one impression. You give something that lasts for 50 years, your cost per impression goes way, way down. Might be more expensive on the front end, but people don't really think about gifting as strategically as they do every other part of their business. They think it's a nice to, it doesn't need to be strategic. And they don't realize that people make decisions based upon how they feel in business. And gifting is one of those last arts that most people do horrible. So if you just do it like above average, you stand out so far ahead above your competitors, it's unbelievable.
Yeah. And John, we have to leave some stuff for people to get Giftology. So I don't even want you telling this story, but it's a fantastic story of what happened when John met Cameron Harold, and then what happened after their first meeting to their second meeting. So I don't even want you telling the story. You're gonna have to read it in Giftology. It's for sure worth the read. On that.
It's the opening chapter of the book. It's that story. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah, it's a great one. And so Giftology, right? So I'm curious of what stories didn't make the book that are powerful, because you have so many amazing stories and you can't include all of them. What didn't make it?
Well, what's interesting is a lot of the things that we do gifting wise, we kind of follow a similar playbook. Whether we're going after a manufacturer, whether we're going after a food company, like the one, like David Estes, who's a bigwig at a company, I don't think made the cut, but he was somebody that I wanted to impress, and I sent a gift, and I targeted it towards the wife, like I targeted it towards the inner circle.
Yeah.
And then I remember being at an event where she came up and she's all like blinged out with diamonds and gold, and she's just a beautiful woman, and you would have thought I gave her a brand new car, like she almost made me feel uncomfortable. And I'm used to, like, I love the feedback, the positive feedback of the praise. And I sent her 2 knives. But because I put her name on them, and every gift that came into that household always was like branded, or it was all about golf. David's a big golfer. It was finally a gift that included her. And I've had that happen no less than 1,000 times, where people were like, how did you know to do X, Y, and Z for my wife or my assistant or my husband? And I'm like, I knew because you're a human being. Like, I know because humans eat and entertain and like food. I know because I know people like their name on things, not my logo.
Yeah.
And so,
like, I'm a genius.
Yeah, like it's not. Yeah, like people are like, man, you read my mind, or you like knew that we needed knives, or you knew that we needed like a leather bag, and I'm like, I didn't know. I just know because like I know human nature.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of what gifting, like a good gifter, if you want to scale, there's instances where, like the sauna, it was very relevant in the conversation based upon the conversation we had.
Yeah.
But there's 100 others where I use the same gift over and over again, but I personalize it to them, and the note's all about them, and it's their logo, and it's maybe I'll put a date on that was important to them.
Yeah.
But it's the same. Like, what I learned from Paul early on was you can take the same delivery vehicle and use it 1,000 different ways, and to each person it feels like, the only conversation. It's new. And so I found that we don't add a ton of new gifts on a regular basis because we kind of know what works, and we want to like there's certain commonalities that there's very few things that meet our 16 kind of criteria of what makes a great gift, which is a challenge because we have some clients that are literally like, after 15 years, they've used our bag of tricks,
right? And
have the same relationships, and so it's really challenging us to say, holy crap, we gotta like we need more of those Cubs custom speaker experiences. Because we in some cases we've ran out of ideas that really meet our criteria.
So what do you do in that case? Like, a company comes to you, you've been doing this for a long time, it's their 7th year that they want to send something to their executives, suite owners. What does your brainstorming process look like?
Well, I mean, we ask themselves the question, things like what would they really want, and in some cases, maybe they wouldn't want a gift. Maybe we've kind of exhausted the gift things, and we need to rotate in an experience for their kids. I think that we focus on the tangible gift, but it's not the only type of gifting that you can do. It just tends to be the weakest part of what most people do. Most people are like, they get like buying Cubs tickets. They get like taking people out to a nice dinner. And so sometimes we'll say like, hey, why don't you rent out Wrigley Field and invite your clients with their kids and have an experience at Wrigley Field where they get to run the bases with their kids and create a memory. Yeah. Now, we may be able to provide a gift that now is a trigger. I call it the tangible trigger that reminds them of that experience. But even though we don't handle experiential gifting, we know kind of what works. And so we'll help them, guide them on, if you do want to do a dinner and make it a unique experience, maybe we have personally monogrammed steak knives at the sitting beside every plate, so they take home a $500 set of steak knives with them that reminds them of that steak dinner and makes it different than the other 99 dinners that they're going to go on. Or like we're friends, and a client of ours is the first U.S. master sommeliers. There's only 200 of them in the world. The first one in the U.S. is a client. Why don't you bring him in to create a food and wine experience they couldn't buy anywhere else? So it's the best food and wine experience they've ever had. So we go through the process and say, you know what, maybe let's shelf the tangible gift idea and let's just dial up your other experiences.
Yeah. So Caesar's Palace was one of your clients too. Is there an interesting story behind that?
Well, we landed them through a friend of a friend. We ended up, somebody that was out in Vegas that knew somebody. We sent some cool gifts to the VP of sales, and they came back to us and said, John, we need some help. We have 20 or 30 sales reps. They can afford what they want. We want to do something cool, and we ended up targeting something for their spouses. It's called their Emperor's, kind of like the President's Club, but I
figured this would be a good story because they probably give away so much other stuff that I was curious of what you brainstormed with them about.
Yeah, I mean, in that case, it wasn't as sexy as you might think. It ended up being their budget was spent more on the trip that they were going on to, but the timing of the gift going to the sales rep's home and saying thank you to the spouse was a thing that we've done often, which is just the timing of the gift can completely radically change. Like we've done a number of conferences, like mastermind talks, where the spouse gets a gift while the executive's away at this retreat or whatever else. And just the idea of honoring and thanking the spouse when they're at home holding down the fort. Like, and somebody took that playbook and used it on me when I was away at mastermind talks. A gift showed up, and it wasn't mastermind talks related, but they knew I was away. And they sent my wife. She's not into flowers, but they sent her the nicest bouquet. It was probably a $200 bouquet of flowers, honoring me and thanking her for being like holding down the fort. And then they sent gifts for each of my 3 kids.
Wow.
That were personalized. She had talked to my assistant, and then my assistant got a gift. The assistant helped orchestrate. My assistant helped orchestrate all this, gave them the inside information, and then 5 days later, a gift showed up for her and her kids. So oftentimes the timing of the gift when you're away and your wife is ready to kill you because the kids are going crazy, when you can be the hero in that way, it's so we've done that a number of times, and that timing of the gifts makes a huge difference.
John, so any times where a gift backfired? I mean, because we're talking about a lot of success stories. I'm curious if there's any backfired stories.
So I would say on average, 1% of our gifts come back.
Okay.
So if I send out 100 gifts, I'm going to get 1 back. If you're targeting people cold, up to 20% of the gifts can come back.
What do you mean by come back? Like actually someone sent it back?
Yeah. Like
really?
People say,
they just send it back.
I don't want this gift, or they'll email and say, why are you sending me this? Well, they know that in our DNA, Robert Cialdini talks about like reciprocity. They know that reciprocity works. Yeah. And so the person might be going through a divorce. In one case, it was a university going through a fraud investigation at the C level, like at the presidential level. And so anything showing up all of a sudden, they weren't accepting anything. In one case, it was an investment fund, and it was blowing up. It was being like a Ponzi scheme type accusation. And so one of the board members got a gift that was unsolicited, and because of that, you could tell they were like, we understand this might be acceptable, but not for us. And it was, the backstory. You don't know what's going on in somebody's life.
Right.
And so what I love is that because up to 20% can come back, it freaks people out so much that they never gift. Because they think about like the Walmarts of the world that can't even accept a pencil or a cup of coffee. And so they treat everybody the same. And so they don't gift. Now, meanwhile, the other 99% of the people that are out there could accept a gift as long as it was tactful and you're not trying to bribe or buy somebody's business, which we can go into the parameters of what we feel like is a acceptable gift based upon certain things. But up to 20% can come back. So we just did a target to like 40 or 50 people worth like 100 million or more for a client. And it freaked them out. I told them ahead of time up to 20% could come back.
You warned them.
But the business development director, who's one of the 4 partners, literally couldn't sleep because people that were, it was a smaller community, and some of the people sent the gifts back. But the ironic part is like the C-level person at Nike who got the gift, they gave us wrong information, and we engraved the ex-wife's name on a set of knives. and so they got an email saying, really nice gift, but my current wife doesn't really like, Susie's name on the knives. So if
were they saying it like in a joking way? They weren't mad.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, but the person who was in charge of following up, like in his mind, he just like was like, this is worst case scenario. Like I'm so embarrassed, and I'm like, well, let's take $1,000 set. We'll turn it. Let's send him a $3,000 set with his new wife's name on it, and the fact that he responded with an email meant he liked the gift.
Right. Yeah.
Like it's an open door. Like how often do you get into the C level of Nike? And so the other person who's the CFO of this company was like laughing and thinking it's the funniest
It is actually more memorable that way.
Way more memorable. It happened twice on the same campaign. Another person was like, "I'll probably sit down with you for coffee if you start sending gifts with my new wife's name on it because she likes the gifts."
That's like a new part of the playbook. Like first send knives with ex-wife's name, and then get an angry call, and then send.
So like the leather bag, like we've done it with a leather bag, we sent. In that case, it was our fault. It was to a CEO. They sent the bag back, and it was our fault. We misspelled the wife's name. But what's interesting is a few other things went wrong during that campaign. It was custom leather bags, like tote bags for the wives, saying, we have a new bag of tools that we can bring to help you save money, blah, blah, blah. And a number of the people, some of them billionaires, hand wrote thank you notes saying, this is the most thoughtful gift we've ever received.
Wow.
So even when I tell people we're not like murdering puppies here. Like we're sending gifts. Like,
who says
really,
you're murdering puppies?
No, but like there are times where people are like freaking out because they got an email back of somebody saying we don't want your gift. And it's like, we still got an email back. Like if you ran into that person at a wine party and they found out you were the person that sent 3 gifts that were like $500 each with their wife's name on it, like if that's the worst thing you do in your life is send a nice gift that gets rejected,
right?
You've lived a pretty stellar life. And so you have to remind people because not everybody's used to rejection. And especially in the gifting department, most people are clueless and they already feel uncomfortable to send gifts to begin with. And so any form of rejection,
it's interesting.
They take personally. And so I have to coach them through like,
I wouldn't even expect you to do that. That's interesting.
The higher level you do gifting, the more you have to provide.
People are worried. They're
worried, they're freaked out but I like it. Because it means nobody else will go play in that ocean.
Yeah,
it's ours to have.
You stand out. Yeah. So John, you spent 5 years of blood, sweat, and tears on this book, right?
Yeah.
So what was the hardest part about writing and completing it for you?
I think there was some self-doubt of like, when you're a farm boy and you're like you grow up around like rich people and you're poor, you're like, is this book really good enough to like for executives of big companies to read and to really apply? Are people just being nice when I speak and share some of these ideas? And I think that I'm actually a decent writer, but to sit down in front of a computer and write, like I think that we hired Book in a Box to help with the process, and you were actually part of the inspiration to hire them because we had a great conversation, for Mixergy, and you're asking these great questions and I'm telling the stories. And you're like, dude, this is the book. Like, just tell these stories, share these principles. And I'm like, okay, like I can talk them out. And so we interviewed, we transcribed them, and I found that I was even better at speaking them than I was at writing them.
Yeah.
And so then it was just a matter of like going through and editing and polishing and I think that part of the process of like when you write a nice check to somebody and you kind of set that deadline, and my business partner's now like, if we write
you
this
better
check,
finish this thing,
you better freaking finish this. And then my wife is like, you've been talking about this for 5 years, like, get it done already. Like, this is who you are.
Yeah. I think I even said, I'm like, I'll stay up late with you, John. Let's just get this thing done, because it sounded like that you have so many good stories and good principles there.
Dude, that was honestly, like, I can't thank you enough for.
You're welcome.
And I'm not just saying that just because we're on the podcast. Like, I literally I can't take up a week of his evenings. Like, he's already like, he's got multiple projects going on. Like I'm sure we could get it done, but but you were that nudge to be like, okay, Jeremy could do this, but I can just hire somebody if this happens and not take advantage of his kindness.
Yeah, that's great. I'm glad you did it. What else should people know about Giftology that we haven't talked about?
Well, first off, nothing's held back. I mean, I'm sure we'll create a course that dives into providing more framework. But at the end of the day, like I felt like I poured in the best stories that I had into the book.
Yeah.
It's not like I took 16 of the principles and put 8 into the first one and held back 8 for like the next book, or like it's my playbook. And it's not just what we've done for clients. It's what I've practiced in my own life for the last 15 years to land the 25 pro sports teams. And I think that sometimes when people hear the Cubs and hear some of the Fortune 500 companies, they assume that unless they have a $500,000 budget, like the small entrepreneurs can never afford us.
Yeah.
Or they can never afford to, if they wanted to do it on their own, like this isn't for them.
Yeah.
And I have some clients that will invest 5, 10, 15, 20, 50, whatever thousand into gifting strategies. It's some of my best clients are guys doing 4 to 20 million in revenue because they're going up against the Goliaths of the world, and they can't spend $1 million on a trade show. So they have to get creative with their dollars. And really, as much as I like working with, the Fortune 500 companies like a D.R. Horton, I actually enjoy working with the guy who owns the company as much as anybody.
Yeah.
That is its own money on the line because they actually appreciate it the most. And they're also willing to risk and do things a little bit crazier than the corporate person who has to like run it by compliance and all these other things. So I like working with the EO, YPO guys as much as I like working with the Fortune 500.
So John, you mentioned the craziest thing you did was the sauna. What was the craziest thing you convinced one of the clients to do?
Well, one of the just based upon the size and scale of what we did, the seed corn company that picked 1,600 prospects. Most of the time we're picking like a top 50, a top 100, a top 200. Occasionally we'll break 1,000. When we were able to convince them to more than double the target list and go after 1,600 people, and to do 3 gifts in succession, going after their.
You're like a direct response marketing guru.
In some ways, yeah. I mean, I never thought of myself as that person because it was gifting, and it was never cheesy. Like, hey, here's a stress ball. Hey, here's a koozie. Hey, here's a like I love Chet Holmes and I love Ultimate Sales Machine. The only thing I disagree with him on his strategies and people that incorporated it is he was all about doing gifts, once a month or once a quarter, but they were cheap gifts. And I always felt like if you're going to take the time to send something to somebody, make it represent you and your brand well. Don't make it a trinket.
Right.
And so when I was able to commit somebody to send out 1,600 gifts 3 times in a row over the course of a month.
Wow. In the course of a month.
In the course of a month.
Wow.
To go after their 1,600 largest prospects, I was like, this is crazy. Like that was early on in my career.
And they're not cheap gifts, they're
like each gift was anywhere from, the cheapest gifts was like $10, $20, but some of the other ones were like $40, $50, $60. So not like sending saunas, but when you're sending 1,600 of something 3 times in a row, and they're not even clients yet, it's just to get a conversation started and warm up a conversation. That's and that was 10 years ago. I was like, this works. Like, it's like, and then when I saw the response, like people, instead of like talking to them on the phone for 20 seconds, they were sitting down with them for 2 hours. I was like, oh my gosh, like this could be really crazy. So I would say that was, and they were going after farmers, guys farming 10, 20, 30,000 acres of, I'm like, if this can work with farmers and seed corn businesses, then I'm pretty sure like, Silicon Valley or other, pro sports teams could, this is relevant.
Yeah. So John, since it's Inspired Insider, I always ask, what's been the lowest point in the business, and then how you push through?
Yeah, I would say, well, there's probably two low points. One was the girl's father who mentored me and taught me a lot of these radical generosity principles. When we broke up and she went back with her ex, I had the ring ready. I thought I was going to be spending the rest of my life with her back in Ohio. Her dad was kind of like a father figure to me.
Yeah.
And so that was one of those points where I went from like on the top of the world to like sleeping 12, 14 hours a day, not getting out of bed. I blew through all my money. My assistant at the time actually had to pay for some of my bills because I was like, money was that tight. I almost didn't graduate from college. I went from like a 4.0 to like not passing classes. Wow. So that was pretty tough.
How did you get out of that funk? Because you seem like someone who it takes a lot for you to get into something like that.
Yeah, it was deep. I probably similar to a lot of people. Like I had a mentor guy at the Cutco office who was like, hey, there's this new guy who came in the office, seems to have a lot of relationships down in the area that you're in, but he has no business knowledge. Why don't you guys team up? Why don't you mentor him? And so we did, and he had the relationship, I had the knowledge, and we teamed up and we split all the deals, and me taking the focus off of myself and working with him and pouring into him. Yeah. All of a sudden, like I kind of like was able to get momentum and kind of rise out of that.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Best summers ever, and so that was one, and then another one was I had sold half the business thinking it was to grow the business, and ended up. But I'd invest in real estate, and it was about 2007. I invested in commercial, invested in other companies, and everything started to hit the fan. When I sold half the business, we found out that my assistant was stealing from me, which was a big blow. But then she was also my accountant, so she was doing my taxes wrong. So I went through an IRS audit, and then the meltdown happened, and so all this real estate started. Like,
it all just hit it once.
And it lost my brother, his son, my nephew. Drowned.
Oh my God.
It was like in the course of 6 months, everything that could go wrong went wrong.
Jeez.
To the point where I was like, and then I started dating my now wife. And so like I was barely keeping my lips above water. I was living on $1,000 a month take home. My business partner, who was brought on to grow the business, didn't take a salary for 18 months. Wow. We're able to avoid filing for bankruptcy, but it was a tough 18 to 24 months. But without him, if I hadn't sold the business, and I didn't sell 49% of the business, I sold 50% of the business because I felt like if I'm literally going to sell half the business, I want it to be somebody that like, it's almost like a marriage. Like you're in it. Yeah. There's nobody can trump each other. But without him, the business wouldn't have survived. He was the one who said, John, go focus on relationships. I'll handle the back end. Don't worry about it. Like I won't take a salary. Yeah. I don't need the money. I'm good. I believe in you. I believe in what we're gonna do. Yeah. So yeah, that was back in 2007, 2008.
And your wife, tell me about her role at the time and how she helped. Kind of, that's like one of the toughest points of your life. Sounds like
she was a rock. I mean, I would be lying if I didn't say like we didn't go through some rocky periods. Like an entrepreneur when he's almost ready to drown, like, and I'm just like flailing to try to keep above water. Like she got the worst side of seeing an entrepreneur. Right. She heard about the Cameron Harold Brooks Brothers story, but she was getting like ramen noodles and like us buying, going out to dinner, and us splitting dinner. Like she didn't get like the whining and dining and Ritz, the Ritz treatment. She got so the fact that she even just stayed with me, and believed that like I was worth dealing with all this crap and all this mess and baggage, is really in retrospect kind of like unbelievable. Like I think most women would be like, thanks but no thanks. Call me when you got your like crap together. And she was willing to like roll up her sleeves, and like for the first year of marriage, she made more money than I did.
Which is okay.
Which is a humbling, in retrospect it is, but at the time, like my ego, like it bruised my ego. Yeah. And it was difficult for me to, but it was motivating because I wanted to have a family, and I wanted her, if she wanted to be able to stay home with the kids. If she didn't want to, that's fine. But yeah, she was a rock, man. She was, she was a farm girl. She grew up on a couple thousand acres, hog farm. Like she wasn't afraid to like roll up her sleeves and deal with
Right.
some some
Right.
crap. Literally.
So literally. So John, on the flip side, what's been one of the proudest moments for you?
I would say, well, one for, well, this book is is definitely like a proud moment. I would say getting the opportunity of being asked to speak at Google was a huge like.
How did that happen?
I got to be a part of a faith-based organization that kind of like Christian business leaders, young Christian business leaders called Marketplace One. Some guys out of Phoenix started it, and I got to go through a class. They have a kind of a class system, and I go back every year to teach the alumni. And one of the guys that heard me speak on the topic of radical generosity in business was a Googler, and he went back and emailed like hundreds of people and said, "This guy just helped me give the most amazing gift to my wife. I think we could use his help."
Yeah.
And they said, "Yeah, we have this event. We think that you should come and speak at it."
Wow.
And
Where was the event? Was it in
was-
California?
Yeah, it was in Mountain View, so it was at
Wow.
their campus, and
Yeah.
unfortunately they wouldn't let me record it. I would have loved to.
Really?
Yeah, they wouldn't let me. I figured the guy, the company owns YouTube. You think would record everything? Not so much. Not so much. They but was honored to be there and be able to check out the campus. And
So what was your experience like there speaking?
It was great. I mean, I wasn't like I was there all day. It wasn't like I was like Bill Clinton showing up and giving a keynote to the entire company. It was a breakout at an event.
Yeah.
But people were really warm and inviting. They were interested, and I even shared some of the perks and benefits that I give to my company employees, which some of them were like, "Wow, we don't even get that here at Google." Like
Really?
that's pretty. Which was also like, I was like pretty proud that like,
Hell yeah.
yeah, we were doing some things right.
So what's one of those things that you mentioned that they were blown away, even though they get free food, massages, and anything else that they want?
Yeah, pretty much anything on the planet. So one of the things we did early on, we have a lot of moms that work for us, working moms, and they're with kids and young kids, a lot of them, and so we started years ago paying to have their house cleaned every other week. And it costs us like
That's amazing. Yeah.
$1,800 a week. But what's funny is it has like tens of thousands of dollars in value because the husbands are like their lives are easier. The women are less stressed.
Yeah.
Their life goes smoother.
It's a great idea. Wow. Yeah.
It's such a simple concept, but people are like, "How do you afford to do that?" I'm like, "How do you afford not to?" It's like it's a benefit that most people would love to have. They'd never spend the money on themselves to do it, though.
Yeah.
And, so
That's amazing, John. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
I have in my notes the Bubble Banks company. Tell me about that.
So it's not as much top of mind because it's as a business owner you think about revenue sources, but giving is a core value. Like we said a long time ago, my business partner and I don't need to start a charity, but we want to be a spotlight and a funnel. We literally said funnel for a cause that mattered before Bubble Banks was ever in the picture. And so like when I see something, I just look at things from a different angle. I saw this at a wood shop, this kid's piggy bank that was like kind of like two-dimensional, and you were able to feed money into its belly. And I'm like, wouldn't it be cool if we did one like that in the shape of a cow for like Chick-fil-A? Because McDonald's has the little metal boxes. And we ended up testing it in the shape of a cow, and we hoped to do $1 a day. It ended up doing $5 a day. And so we started to, we found out they were patented. We ended up partnering with a patent owner, John Chestnut. And we started to make not only the metal ones that you see in McDonald's, but we partnered with a guy who used to be at McDonald's that collects the money. Most people don't realize that metal box at McDonald's does $30 million a year in change.
Wow. Seriously, that's amazing.
And if you tried to collect like $3,000 worth of change and put it in the back of your car, it would break your axle because it weighs like thousands of pounds. So collecting the money is really difficult in an efficient way. So we started to build devices and refer out this collection company. And so we've helped like Children's Miracle Network, one of the largest children's hospital organizations, We put them into like all the airports across the country. We build the devices. If you go to like an HMS, which runs like Starbucks and those kind of places, we build those devices. And literally, like if you add up, our partners, like the guy from McDonald's who collects $30 million a year, like we've, tens of millions of dollars.
You basically help them process that.
We process
more efficiently,
and we help them create creative devices to put money into them to give to charity. And we maybe break even. It's not like retirement money, but for us, it's like that's money that would end up in like a coffee can at somebody's house. Like if you can get people, and if you make it fun enough, kids will, like we've seen kids feed $50 worth of money of their mom's purse that has change in the bottom of the purse into these banks.
What is it? Like what does it look like? What's the most elaborate bank?
Like a dinosaur, like a big 4-foot tall blue dinosaur that says "Feed me." My money, my money goes to Children's Hospital or whatever. And so they, the kids love watching the money go into the the mouth of the. It feels like they're feeding the dinosaur, feeding the dog, or feeding the cow or the giraffe. And so these, we have units, thousands of units all over the country. And always looking anybody that has a retail location where cash might be present, or a doctor's office where there's captive audience with kids. I mean, we can raise incremental money that's pretty insane.
That's amazing
for a charity.
Yeah, John, thank you so much. I have one last question for you, but first, tell people where can they go and get Giftology? Where can they check you out?
Yeah, so if they can go to Giftology Book.
Giftologybook.com.
Book.com.
Okay.
They can go to RuhlinGroup.com to check out some case studies and some of the strategies that we employ.
Yeah.
They can follow me on Twitter, at Ruhlin, Facebook. I mean, all the kind of the normal places.
Yeah. And Ruhlin Group is RUHLIN and then group GROUP.com. And I will be getting an Audible when you come out with the audio version, even though I've already read it. I always like listening to it as well. Last question, John. Who are some of the companies and entrepreneurs you want as a client? In case someone listening knows them. Who's on your list right now?
Yeah, so I've had conversations with Gary Vaynerchuk, but I have not landed him as a client.
Because you're in one of his videos.
I am.
You're everywhere. I'm like watching a Gary V video, and then I'm like, wait, I think that's John right there. Right?
Yeah. He came to St. Louis and was meeting with Andy Frisella, and I'd bought some books, and we were supposed to meet up, and ended up buying a bunch of food for him, waiting in his room, and he's like, "Why don't you just come hang out with me for the night?" And of course, like I was a fly on the wall. Like he's there to add value to Andy Frisella's company, the supplement company, and so we didn't really get a chance to chat. He's like, "Hey, meet with me when in New York," but he's somebody that gives, adds value, and I think that he could leverage the gifting side. A couple of the gifts that we've given him, like the Lego. You've seen like the Lego. That's one of our clients.
Yeah, Chris Green has a testimonial video about you and how he sent this like exact replica Lego of the Gary Vee set.
Yeah. So he would be somebody that we know as acquaintances, but I'd love to be a partner of theirs for them and their clients.
Yeah.
Tim Ferriss, I think would really appreciate what we do and what we teach around habits and I think gratitude. I mean, he was a big supporter of the 5-Minute Journal, which is great.
Yeah.
But most people don't know how to take action on their gratitude. And then I would say I've corresponded with Seth Godin. And he always responds, but and he's a big fan of Cutco. One of our clients sent him knives, and he's like, these are almost too sharp to use, and he uses them.
He
all
shaves
the time.
his head with them, or no?
Exactly. And I would say Michael Hyatt is another person I respect and follow from afar. I know Stu McLaren does some stuff for him, but I haven't asked for any favors there to get. But I really respect his platform and who he is. From a faith perspective, I think we would really resonate and connect with. So those are some people that that are on my radar. Hopefully, Giftology will end up in their hands.
Yeah. So if anyone has any ideas on that, contact John, or actually forget John, just contact them directly and see what you can do for John, because he's always giving to other people. So John, I really appreciate it. This has been fantastic. Thank you so much.
Jeremy, thanks, man, for having me. This has been awesome.
Yeah.
Can't believe the time went by that fast.
I know.
Crap.
I know.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sailing right now. I'm feeling like 100 grand.